Today we begin with a very special and exciting series, our story, the first season of The Walking Dead. We begin the episode with Sheriff Rick Grimes and his friend Shane in a police patrol car. At the same time, he receives a message about a car chase involving criminals. Rick and Shane drive their car, block off the road with barbed wire, and wait for the car to stop. However, the car accelerates at full speed, goes over the barbed wire, and flips over. The criminals get out of the car, and a shootout ensues between them, Rick, Shane, and the police, resulting in the deaths of all the criminals. Suddenly, a gunman emerges from the car and shoots Rick in the back. After Shane kills him, Rick tries to revive him and calls an ambulance. Rick wakes up in the hospital to find Shane talking to him and bringing him flowers. When he wakes up, he searches for Shane but can't find him. He finds the flowers he brought him on the table next to him, but they're rotten. Struggling to get up, Rick falls out of bed. He calls for a nurse to help him, but no one answers. He got up, and when he left his room, he found the hospital corridor destroyed with no one in the hospital. He even found a chained door with the words, "Do not open the door, death lies inside." Something terrifying. A strange-looking hand emerged from the crack in the door. Terrified, Rick ran out of the hospital. He found bodies everywhere and all the army vehicles destroyed. He found a wheel on the ground with a half-mutilated body next to it heading toward him. He panicked and fell. He then got into the wheel and ran home. As soon as he entered, he screamed and called for his wife, Lori, and his son, Carl, but found no one home. The house was empty and he wept in grief. He then went outside and sat down, seeing a man. He tried to point him out, but at the same moment, a child appeared from behind him and hit him on the head. He called his father, who had been beating the man Rick had been talking to, and threatened Rick with a gun, but Rick fainted. When he woke up, he discovered the man's name was Morgan and his son, Dwayne. When Morgan was sure Rick was okay, he began telling him about a plague that had spread throughout the world and that people were turning into zombies or walking dead, as the show calls them. Anyone bitten or scratched by them would develop a fever and then turn into a zombie. He told him that the man he saw outside was a zombie like them and he could have killed him. Then a zombie knocked on the door. Dwayne kept crying. Morgan told Rick that it was his wife who had been infected and turned into a zombie and that he couldn't kill her. The next morning, Rick went out and helped Morgan and Dwayne kill the zombies so they could go to Rick's house. When they entered the house, Rick told him that all the pictures of him, his wife and son were gone, as were the clothes. This was proof that they had managed to escape. There was a possibility they were still alive. They would be found in Atlanta because there were safe places for refugees there. He learned this from his radio before it stopped working, and Rick regained hope. He went with Morgan and Dwayne to the police station where he worked. Rick took the weapons, some of which belonged to Morgan, and gave him a sniper rifle. After that, Rick decided to go to Atlanta while Morgan told him he couldn't go with him and would stay where they were with his son. But Rick handed him the radio and asked him to turn it on every day at sunrise and try to contact them and to go there and find him. Then Morgan aimed to kill his wife, but he couldn't and broke down in tears. It was a very difficult thing. Meanwhile, Rick got into the police car and drove to Atlanta. He radioed that he had arrived in Atlanta and that no one was listening or answering. At that moment, Rick's friend, Shane, answered the radio, but Rick didn't hear him. Shane was at the city limits with Lori, Carl, and a group of people. It seemed that Shane and Lori had been dating after Shane told her that Rick had died in the hospital. Rick's car ran out of gas, so he had to walk until he found an abandoned house filled with bodies. All he found was a horse. They continued walking until they reached Atlanta. There, the city was empty, but he later learned that zombies had overrun it. Rick tried to escape, but they cornered him until he fell off his horse, his weapon bag fell off, and the zombies ate his horse. He hid under a tank and realized there was an entrance underneath it through which he could enter. He found a gun, a grenade, and a zombie inside the tank and killed it. But Rick was trapped inside the tank. At the same moment, he finds someone talking to him on the radio in the tank. His name is Glenn. He tells Rick that he is trying to help him and asks him to move towards a small street. Rick moves quickly and Glenn follows him and they run until they reach a group of people. Teddy, Andrea, Morales, Jackie, and Merle. They hear the sound of gunfire from the roof of the building. Merle comes out and shoots at the zombies. Teddy tries to stop him because the sound will attract the zombies to them. But Merle hits Teddy. No one can stop Merle except Rick, who hits him. They handcuff him to the wall and give the key to Teddy to keep watch. Rick and the group with him try to get out of the building they are in before the zombies storm the place. They tried to get out of the building's drains but found them clogged. Rick suggested they cover themselves in zombie entrails because zombies smell like humans so they could move around them. Rick and Glenn went and got the car they were going to escape in. They did just that and moved around the zombies. Unfortunately, as they were walking, it started to rain and the smell of the entrails they were covering themselves with started to go away. The zombies attacked them, but they managed to jump over an iron fence and reach the car. They escaped and found that the zooms were everywhere, so Glenn got into another car and turned on its alarm loudly, luring the zooms away so Rick could save the people in the building. At the same time, they all go down quickly, but Merle asks Ted Dog to take off the handcuffs so he can escape with them, but Ted Dog drops the key into the drain pipe and they are forced to leave Merle and lock the roof door and escape. They all get into the car with Rick. After they arrived at the camp, Rick found his wife Lori, his son Carl, his friend Shane, and a group of people there. Daryl, Merle's brother, the Morales family, Amy, Andrea's sister, Ed, his wife Carol, their daughters Sophia and Dale, his assistant Jim and Berg. Rick was with his family and neither they nor he could believe he was still alive. He hugged them and appreciated Rick's time with his family. That morning, Daryl appeared and asked him about his brother Freak. He told him that he handcuffed him on the roof of the building because he had hit Tig. Daryl got angry and attacked Rick. But Shane grabbed him and tried to calm him down. Rick decided to go with Daryl, Glenn, and Tig to rescue Merle. He convinced Lori, who refused out of concern for him, and told her that he needed the bag of weapons he had dropped there. When they arrived at the roof of the building, they found Merle missing, his hand severed, and a saw next to it. They learned that he had cut it off to escape. We return again to Rick and his companions, who decide to search for Merle and try to reach the bag of weapons that Rick dropped next to the tank. Glenn offers to go get the bag since he's the fastest one among them. Glenn actually reaches the bag and Daryl was waiting for him. He finds a man and threatens him. He asks about Daryl, but the boy gets scared and calls his friends, who suddenly appear and attack Daryl, beating him up. They try to take the bag from Glenn, but Daryl shoots one of them in the leg with an arrow. They kidnap Glenn, leave the bag of weapons, and flee. When Rick and Ty Dog arrive, they catch the boy and interrogate him to find out who the people with him are and bring Glenn back. After he tells them, they go to the leader of the group, Guy. He tells them that he agrees to give them their friend Glenn in exchange for the bag of weapons and time to think. Rick then decided to arm Daryl and Tig and they went to Guy again. He offered to take their friend and bring Glenn back, but Guy refused and decided to kill them. Guy's men pointed their weapons at Rick and those with him. Before they could start attacking, an old woman intervened and stopped them. Rick learned that Guy was taking care of a group of elderly people and needed the weapon to protect them. Rick gave him some of the weapons, took Glenn, and they decided to return to camp. But when they arrived at the location, they found the car had disappeared. They thought that Merle had taken the car and returned to the camp to take revenge, so they decided to run back to camp. In the camp, they were all sitting, lighting a fire, and talking. Suddenly, zombies attacked Ed while he was in his tent and ate him. They attacked the camp and killed Amy, Andrea's sister. But Rick's group had returned and were able to repel the zombies with the weapons they had. In the morning, they decide to burn the zombie corpses and Andrea is forced to kill her sister after she turns into a zombie. They discover that Jim is infected and has been bitten by a zombie. Opinions differ between killing him so he can stay with them, and in the end, they decide to keep him with them. Later, Rick suggests that they go to the CDC and treat Jim. At this point, Rick and Shane clash, who disagrees with his suggestion and thinks they should go to the army camp, believing it will be safer. However, in the end, they all agree to Rick's suggestion. However, Morales decides to go to Birmingham to his family, and Rick gives him a gun to keep with him to protect his family. Meanwhile, Rick tries to talk to his friend Morgan on the radio and tell him what happened, but he doesn't answer. He leaves him a message in the car at the camp, and they all leave. Jim's fever worsens on the way, and he can't continue. They leave him in the middle of the road and leave. When Rick and his companions arrived, they found all the doors locked and zombie corpses everywhere. Rick kept checking the surveillance camera and calling for them to open the door, but Dr. Gaines, the only person left in the place, refused to open it, fearing they might be infected. Rick kept calling and pleading until Dr. Gaines decided to open the door, and they all felt like the situation was theirs again. We go back to Sheen when Rick was in a coma in the hospital. As the epidemic began to spread, he tried to take Rick out of the hospital. But then the army attacked the hospital, killing all the zombies and infected people. Sheen finds that Rick's pulse has stopped and he thinks he's dead. He grieves over him and feels compelled to leave him. He locks the door to Rick's room with the patient's bed so no one can enter and runs away. We return again to Rick and his companions after they enter the center. Dr. Gaines asked them if any of them were infected and that they would all undergo medical examinations before he would allow them to stay. They were all examined, and when he was sure they were not infected, he reassured them. After that, they all ate dinner and continued to eat and drink. They asked him why there was no one else here. He told them that most of those who worked with him had stayed with their families, fled, or committed suicide because of the collapse. However, he was the only one who continued to carry on, hoping that he might be able to do something useful to save the world. After that, they all went to sleep and took a shower after the exhaustion they had experienced during the previous period. The next day, Dr. Gaines gathered them and explained to them what happened during the disease. He told them that the human brain remains normal until it is infected and that the infection and disease invade the human brain and cause death, followed by the death of all the organs in the body. He also tells them that after that, during the revival phase of the infection, part of the brain returns to life, allowing them to stand and move, but as monsters, not humans, displaying a savage instinct without reason. Then Del asks them about the attach clock and what will happen when the countdown reaches 0. He tells them that the fuel will run out in the power generators, then leaves them, but they follow him until he tells them that the place is designed to withstand any terrorist attack, and that when the fuel runs out in the power generators, a comprehensive disinfection will take place and the entire place will explode. At the same time, he presses a button and locks all the doors, leaving everyone trapped inside with the countdown running. They kept begging him to open the door for them, but he refused until they threatened to kill him. Rick begged him to give them a chance at life and not be the reason for their deaths. Dr. Geese decided to open the door for them. Rick thanked him and greeted him. However, Dr. Geese whispered something to Rick and they all started running away. Jackie, T-Dog's wife, decided she would stay in the building and die in the explosion. T-Dog tried to convince her to escape with them, but she insisted. She and Andrea, who had lost hope in life after her sister's death, stayed. Del tried to change her mind, telling her that he would stay by her side and die with her. Meanwhile, Rick, Sheen, and T-Dog tried to break the building's glass to escape, but to no avail. Until Carol told Rick that she found the bomb in his pocket while she was washing his clothes, so he took it and detonated it in the glass. They broke it and quickly left and got into the cars. He found Andrea and Del also leaving at the last minute, and the countdown reached 0 and the whole place exploded. After that, they all moved in the cars, hoping to find a safe place for them. And thus, the first season of the enjoyable series The Walking Dead ended. Like the video. Write in the comments what you think of the series and if you want us to continue the rest of the seasons. And don't forget to join the Sam Bubbles family and activate the bell. Bye.